I'm Charlie Sykes. Welcome to the Contrary podcast, and I am joined today. This is the first time. Ron Fournier, legendary reporter who is now on Substack. Legendary. I mean, at least you don't get people saying, I listened to you when I was in grade school, because I get that kind of shit. I have to tell you. It's
Oh
just
no,
so.
I get that. I had somebody the other day tell me how 9/11 was history, and I cried softly to myself.
Oh man, it gets worse. Well, anyway, Ron has a new Substack: Convulsions, Politics, Culture, Communications, and Life, which keeps you busy. So,
Yes, sir.
on any given day, you and I were talking about this, and you've been covering, like, how many presidencies have you covered over
I
over
did
the years?
Clinton through Obama.
Clinton through Obama. So on any given day, we could talk about the unprecedented corruption of the Trump regime. We could talk about his war on Harvard, which is extraordinary, the war on international students, which is escalating, the legal fight involving the law firms, which the court decisions are not going well for Donald Trump, which, by the way, is a reminder that all those quisling big law firms could have won if they had just bothered to fight. Yeah, they probably would have. But I have a theme for you today, Ron,
Okay.
which is the end of big, beautiful friendships. And let's just talk about this. We have Vladimir Putin, we have Elon Musk, and we have Bibi Netanyahu, who up until 5 minutes ago were Donald Trump's best buddies. And now it seems as if these big, beautiful friendships are at least going through a rocky period. They're, maybe just starting to see other people. So let's start with Elon Musk, because this is actually rather extraordinary. You're familiar with the interviews he's given. He's apparently given a whole bunch of interviews. Here's the headline in the New York Times: Musk disappointed with major Trump policy bill, saying it will increase deficit. Daily Mail reports Musk, who spoke to multiple outlets about the White House betrayal, went on to decry the treatment he and his baby-faced Doge henchman had received. Doge is just becoming the whipping boy for everything, he told the Washington Post. Something bad would happen, and we would get blamed for it, even if we had nothing to do with it, which is sad. So give me your take on what's going on, why Elon Musk has chosen now to give interviews to everybody, basically kneecapping Donald Trump's signature legislative not yet accomplishment.
Well, let's look at what Elon Musk, Bibi Netanyahu, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump have in common. None of those men have friends. None of those men have true partnerships. All four of those men are the four most transactional human beings on the face of the earth. They're in it for themselves. It's very binary. There is no, I'll give you half if you give me half. It's, I'll take it all, or F you. So when the interests of Musk and Trump aligned for a few chaotic, cataclysmic weeks at the beginning of this year, they seemed, you use that word, they seemed to be friends. But now that Musk's company is on the brink of collapse, his reputation has been destroyed. He now only has the support of less than half the country, where he came into this year being seen as somewhat of a genius and a trailblazer, and whose company was serving the most liberal auto consumers in the country. Now that he's his reputation and his business in its tatters, it's in his best interest to go after Trump, so he's going after Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, it is interesting when you think about the collapse of people's reputations. Rick Wilson has the phrase, everything Trump touches dies. In the case of Rudy Giuliani, well, case proven. But Elon Musk, you talk about what his image was just a couple of years ago. When Time magazine was describing him as this world bestriding genius, and there were these lavish biographies and profiles. And now, he's basically a punchline and a joke, and his reputation is in tatters. The turning point for Elon Musk is, unfortunately, is pretty clear. He, thought he was going to be not just the president's, best buddy, but that he was going to be a kingmaker in MAGA world and the Republican Party. Comes here to my home state of Wisconsin, spends tens of millions of dollars, and gets handed, all he, has to show for it is that stupid cheesehead, which, by the way, I also have a cheesehead. I'm not saying that they're stupid, but and from that moment on, he seems to have been in decline, moving, away from the circles of power, and you could tell that there was a break on the issue of tariffs. Um, that he clearly is not was not on board whatever Donald Trump is doing with these trade wars, but breaking with Trump on this bill strikes me as really interesting because his entire brand in Trump world was to cut the budget. Now, this turned out to be a complete fraud. He wasn't able to cut the budget, but that was the image. And now for him to basically call bullshit on the big beautiful bill that it's not going to cut the deficit.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
all bullshit. The brand was
yeah,
bullshit. He's not a budget cutter. He's not a great systems innovator. He placed a couple lucky bets and became a multi-billionaire, one of the richest men in the world. But doesn't mean that he has all the answers, especially in government. So again, it was just a very brief mutual alignment of interests. It was really predictable. I know you predicted it. I predicted. Others predicted that the partnership wouldn't last. What happened in Wisconsin just opened Trump's eyes to the fact that, okay, I no longer need him. But if it wasn't that, it would
right.
have been something else. And
Well, it
it's
also
opened
opened
Musk's eyes that
Elon's eyes.
Musk
Yeah.
doesn't need Trump anymore. Matter of fact, Musk needs to push off of Trump, so that's what he's doing. 6 months from now, they'll need each other again, and they'll get in bed again, and it'll all be bullshit.
Well, I mean, Musk cannot break totally with Trump because he needs Trump's protection. He needs the largesse. He knows that if there's a Democratic president, the things break very, very badly for him. So, like a lot of these oligarchs, at the trough, they may not be close, but this is an administration that basically says, look, you're either with us or you're against us, and you don't want to be against us. I mean, let's just move on. I want to come back to the big, beautiful friendships, but the level of corruption in this administration is breathtaking, and it's really based on you have to kiss the ring, otherwise the president will destroy you. If you do kiss the ring, if you write out massive checks, you get benefits and favors, and none of it's hidden. It's all right out there in the open.
Yeah, that's the two things that's really astonished me is, first of all, the level of corruption is far greater than anything we've seen. We saw a president in the 60s and early 70s try to steal an election that he didn't need to, and then lying about it. We saw a president in the late 90s reward donors with White House perks, like being able to stay in the
Yeah.
Lincoln bedroom.
Right.
The Teapot Dome scandal.
Nothing.
There's all kinds of examples of corruption in our past, but not to this extent. We've never, I mean, and this isn't an opinion, Charlie, this is a
No,
fact that
but
we've never seen a president make this much money off of the presidency. Billions of dollars that are going directly into his pocket and to pockets of his families based on deals that he's making where he's leveraging our office. We've never seen it to this extent. And then two, like you say, it's the brazenness of it. It's how open it is. And you keep hearing his people defending him by saying, well, he's doing this out in the open. He's the most
yeah.
transparent president ever. And I think to myself, is it okay if I rob a bank if I go, before I do, I announce on Substack that I'm going to rob a bank? And then when I walk in, I shoot myself live, with a selfie
Yep.
live video frame saying I'm robbing a bank. Is it okay to break the law when you do it openly and unapologetically and braggadociously? Because that's his MO, to do it worse than anybody else has ever done it, and to do it more openly and more brazenly than anybody else has done it. It's astonishing. And I say to my MAGA friends and neighbors, guys, he's setting a precedent. Do you not think there's ever going to be a Democrat elected president again? And do you not think that she or he will be as brazen and as corrupting as Donald Trump? This is a horrible precedent that we're allowing to let happen.
Well, I mean, and also, I mean, this, by the way, the fact that he's doing it in the open is what Speaker Mike Johnson is saying when he's asked about it. You guys were all worked up about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, and by the way, the Hunter Biden stuff was very, very skeevy. There's no question about it. But his answer is essentially, well, look, how bad can it be if you're doing it, in broad daylight? And that is kind of the stunning element of all of this, that there's no pretense at all, and it's hard to keep up with it. I mean, and in my newsletter, I posted a link to the big New York Times wrap up piece from Sunday, on all of the ways in which he's enriching himself, and the New Yorker has done a piece about all of this, but it is hard to keep up because there are just so many ways. You look at the plane, do you look at the crypto scam, do you look at the deals that he's cutting in Vietnam and elsewhere? I mean, it is kind of amazing. So, yeah.
Just take two. Let's compare Hunter Biden, where the president's son made tens of thousands of dollars, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, by leveraging his close association with the president. That is a fact.
Yeah.
And that as far as the factual record goes, that he leveraged his father's office to make several $100,000 for foreign companies.
Right.
Bad.
Right.
Terrible. Should not happen. Okay, just take one of Trump's scandals. He's making tens of millions of dollars, approaching billions of dollars, just off the meme coins. Just off of people being able to secretly give him tens of millions of dollars to buy something that's really of not much value, a meme coin. And they know in exchange for that, they're getting access to the president. Literally, the president had a big party the other day where his top private donor, who will never be disclosed, had access to him. And, we've had at least one pardon that's come after that, where he's given a very bad guy who pleaded guilty to bad things a pardon. It's far worse than anything we've seen, including the Biden scandal, and far more
not even
brazen.
Close. Yeah.
It's astonishing.
Well, I mean, whataboutism is kind of a superpower of the Trumpists, because there's always something you can cite. But what they figured out, I think, or at least they believe, is that as long as you have a whataboutism, a what about thing to point to, it doesn't matter what the scope of the scale is. There's no comparativeness. So this guy stole $10,000 or $100,000. Okay, so we're going to steal 10 billion. Same thing. Right? I mean, it's...
Well, even if it was worse in the past or the same, to me, the scale doesn't matter as much as, weren't we all taught, especially those of us raised in a Christian tradition, were we not all taught from toddlerhood that two wrongs don't make a right?
Yeah, we forgot that.
For one, but we now have two parties, and the Democrats do this as well, who, as soon as they get in trouble, they say, yeah, what about the other guy? Well, I am so tired of that. And so are a lot of voters, by the way.
What feels different about this, of course, is also the sense that Donald Trump can engage in this kind of corruption with absolute impunity, because the Supreme Court not only gave him immunity, but also who's going to enforce it? What are the guardrails? What are the checks and balances? And at the moment, there are no checks and balances on him. And, he can sit in the Oval Office and go and on one issue after another say, well, why not? Who's going to stop us? And when it comes to the corruption, the answer is no one. Okay, so back to the big, beautiful friendships. The Elon Musk feels he needs to distance himself for whatever reason. And by the way, I think that Musk would like it to be a friendly disagreement. We disagree on policy because, as I mentioned before, I don't think he can afford to break. But the problem with Donald Trump is you're either at his feet or at his throat. I mean, so we'll see how Trump reacts. I mean, he could lash out at Elon. I don't know what's going to happen here. But let's talk about Vladimir Putin, because over the weekend, Trump bleated out, whatever you want to call it. Something's gone wrong with what's happened to Vladimir Putin. He's gone completely crazy. Why is he killing all these people? And there were some people who said, well, no, he's finally realizing, his eyes are open with Vladimir Putin. I'm a little skeptical that Donald Trump will ever distance himself from Vladimir Putin. What do you think?
So am I. I think two things that are happening that seem to be contradictory. One, yes, a very muddled non-strategic, not incredibly bright man has finally realized that um, that Putin wants the war to go on. He probably doesn't understand
Yeah.
why. He probably still doesn't
Yeah.
understand that Putin invaded a free country and that Putin has no incentive to give back that land. But I think he has woken up and realizing that Putin's not buying his BS. But at the same time, I can't see Trump pushing back on Putin. He's complaining now, I think, just to give himself cover so he can walk away from Ukraine. Stop giving them weapons. Stop trying to mediate, and leaving Ukraine at the mercy of Russia and Putin getting what he wants at the end of the day. My guess is that's what happens. All that's happening now is Donald Trump is setting up Putin to be the bad guy. And surprise, we all knew Putin was a bad guy.
Well, but there's also a sense that he is realizing that he's being humiliated. I mean, I've argued that Vladimir Putin seems to be the one guy in the world who gets Donald Trump. Everybody else, is quaking in fear of Donald Trump. And Putin says, no, Donald Trump's a sensitive, needy man baby, and I'm going to show him who's boss here. I mean, it's not just that he's not going along with Trump. He just seems to be giving him this gigantic middle finger. I mean, they have this 2-hour conversation last Monday. Donald Trump comes out and says it's excellent. And then over the weekend, what does Vladimir Putin do? He launches the biggest drone missile attack ever on Ukraine, which seems like a constant way of not just defying Trump, humiliating him. And the fact that he's doing it, he's completely unafraid that there'll be any negative consequences. So, I mean, I
Because there
sense
won't
that
be.
at some level, Trump, he doesn't mind the killing, but he minds the humiliation.
Yeah, he's the most feral politician I've ever seen. He doesn't act strategically. He acts in the moment, reactively, like a cornered rat. So Putin is doing what Putin's always done, which is grabbing uh, power and territory wherever he can. And you're right, playing Trump like a man baby. He'll continue doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Putin's going to get what he wants out of Trump. And Trump is doing what he does, which is now that he sees that he's not going to be able to solve this, that Putin isn't listening to him, now he's going to try to make Putin out to be the bad guy and rewrite the narrative, pretend that he hasn't been suckered for the last 3 years, or more than that actually, and pretend that he
Yeah.
didn't promise to end it on day one. It's all kabuki. And at the end of the day, my guess is Putin gets what he wants, which is um, Ukraine, and Trump finds a way to convince 30% of America that he didn't lose Ukraine.
Well, he may get 30%, but see that is the reality check here. That if in fact you're right, and I'm not disagreeing with that, that you have the defeat of Ukraine, the disaster of Ukraine. That's not going to make Donald Trump look strong. That's not going to make Donald Trump look like the world bestriding statesman that he's been portraying himself as. I mean, one of the real turning points for Joe Biden, of course, was the fiasco in Afghanistan. I don't think he ever recovered from that. I'm not sure that losing Ukraine is going to be something that Donald Trump's going to be able to brush off.
Well, it doesn't. He's not going to run for president again, so it really
Mm.
doesn't. You know,
He doesn't give a shit.
this could, yes, Ukraine could be his COVID. He could, because of this, he could leave office at 40%, 35%. But at the end of the day, he's going to have his base.
Mm-hmm.
He'll fool 30, 35, 40% of the public to still be behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And that base is not going to go away. Donald Trump to me has always been a symptom of the problem, not the problem. And so the tactics that he's used to get himself elected twice and to sustain his popularity with a strong plurality of the country, someone else is going to pick up that mantle. It's losing Ukraine is not going to destroy MAGA. That's what I'm all about. What do we do to
Right.
eradicate MAGA? Not beat Trump. What do we do to create a new system in this country, a new movement in this country that eradicates MAGA once and for all?
Okay, I'll
Ukraine
bite.
is not going
What?
to be the
What?
issue.
All right. What will be? Is there anything I mean, I read somebody arguing that after Trump leaves, there'll be a return to the mean. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So you have some thoughts? What is it going to take?
It's going to take.
You're sitting in Trump country right now, right up there in Michigan.
I live in Detroit. I spend
Mm-hmm.
my May through September up here in northeast Michigan, in one of the Trumpiest counties around. So I have a good idea, very good idea about how both halves of this two-party monopoly, this duopoly, think. And I can tell you, I'm convinced that the answer isn't going to come from either party. The
Okay.
Democratic Party is too out of touch, too dependent on MAGA. The Democratic Party wants MAGA to survive. They like the fact that they're the least worst party. They're comfortable defending the status quo against a guy who, for all his faults, at least Trump realizes the status quo isn't acceptable. So I think what's going to take is a movement outside of our political system, a movement outside of this duopoly, that makes his organizational goal not winning the next election. That's not enough. It's the organizational goal has got to be to win the next several elections by landslides. The way you eradicate MAGA is the way we eradicated the Red Scare and McCarthyism. Several elections by a landslide, where a new form of government, reforming government, radically changing government for a new century occurred. And I'm not saying it's got to be as ultra-liberal as the FDR coalition, but it does have to be as disruptive as the FDR coalition. And it's got to be as reformational in an affirmation way as the FDR coalition was. Say what you want about the New Deal. It did get 65% of the American public united behind a new American story. That's what's got to happen. And it did completely change the way we run campaigns and govern after we win. That's what's got to happen in this century. I can't see the Democrats doing that. Democrats just want to defend the status quo.
So what does that look like? Does it look like economic populism, being socially moderate? What does it look like?
Yeah, I don't think it's our traditional left or right or center. I do think it is populist. The one thing that unites 80% of Americans is we all know the current system sucks. And by system, I don't just mean the political system, although it does suck to high heaven. But all of our institutions have been letting us down and have been destroying our faith in them since the 70s. So what we all know that we need a new social contract and a new way to campaign and govern in this country. That's 80% of the public. So that's the one thing Trump has done is recognize the problems. He's got the exact worst solutions to them, but he's recognizing that all of our institutions need to be destroyed and rebuilt. So the way it's going to look like is having a populist movement, much like Trump in the sense of identifying the problems. And much like Obama did as well. We can change. The problem is when Obama got in office, he didn't change anything. He became a typical Democrat. And when Trump got in office, he changed everything the wrong way. But why can't we have a positive populist movement? A movement that changes politics and business and our culture in a positive way that gets 60% of us united behind reforms.
But what are we talking about here, though? So, I mean, destroy the institutions. What institutions do you envision destroying?
For one thing,
what changes?
In politics, I would start with the fact that right now, it is almost impossible for anything other than a MAGA-infused totalitarian party or a status quo outdated party like the Democratic Party to win. We should have election laws that allow more than two parties. We should have primary campaigns that right now are rigged to create extreme candidates to win. That all you have to worry about is if you're a Republican is to be as far right as you possibly can so you don't get primaried. And if you're a Democrat, you got to be as far left as you can be so you don't have to be primaried. It would be very easy to change our election laws so that our primaries are open, that any American taxpayer should be able to vote in any taxpayer-funded election, which includes all of our political primaries. And you should not be able to win one of those primaries unless you have a majority of the vote. Most of our Congress right now is elected by 10% of the people in their districts. That's obscene. We can change that. That's just two examples.
Well, you can change it. and it makes sense to change it. It's not easy to change it. You have the establishment invested in the status quo. I mean, there's a reason why it exists, and people generally don't vote to give away their political edge because it obviously complicates lives to actually democratize the system, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they did in 2016 and no, no, yeah, 2016, and I'm getting my. They did twice for Trump, and they did for Obama.
Yeah.
People voted for change. They just didn't get it in the way that they want it under Trump, in the way that's responsible, and they didn't get it at all under Obama. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's very, very hard, and it may be
Okay. So,
impossible, but we've got to do it.
okay, I am extremely skeptical of, and by the way, I agree that we'd be better off without the duopoly. I'm just extremely skeptical that there's any way in our system to move past the entrenched two-party
So am I.
system. But there's something going on in Michigan that you mentioned before we started talking. Can you just tell me a little bit of background? Because if there's a formula, we might be seeing it playing out in your home state. So what's happening there?
Yeah, it's a test. We've had independent governors in other states, but it would be remarkable in a swing state like Michigan, following 2 terms of a Republican governor and then 2 terms of a Democratic governor, now with Governor Whitmer, if an
Mhm.
independent candidate defeated the duopoly. And there's a guy named Mike Dougen. He's the 3-term mayor of Detroit, the man who, working with both parties, working with the business community, working with the philanthropic community, helped lead Detroit out of a bankruptcy to a real credible revival. He's got a real serious record in Detroit as a reformer. He's also a longtime Democrat, came right out of the Democratic machine.
Yeah.
But there's no way a can-do, practical politician can win the Democratic primary. So he's running as an independent. There was a poll that came
Okay,
out this week.
he's a Democrat. He's a Democrat who's running as an independent. So there will
Independent,
be three candidates on the
at least
ballot.
3 candidates.
You think?
Right now, of course, he's being mocked and scorned and ostracized by the Democratic Party because it's a
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party only with a capital D, not with a small d. And he's being taken lightly by the Republican Party. So there's a poll that came out this week that shows he's sitting at about a quarter of the vote. He's within striking distance of being in the lead in a three-way primary, three-way election. And he's drawing equally from Republicans and Democrats. There are people up here in this county that I'm in who have supported Donald Trump twice, who agree with Donald Trump that we have to change our political system. We have to modify things like DEI. Our DOJ has gone too far. Our government's too big. The New World Order needs to be changed. Our trade policies need to be more American focused. They agree with Trump that those the media is out of touch and too elitist. They agree with the president on those things, but they don't like how he's executing them. They don't like his
Okay.
style and his policies. They're open to a guy like Dougen. And then there's a lot of Democrats who are walking away from the Democratic Party, but don't want to walk to MAGA, who are looking at Dougen. So can it happen? It's going to be awfully hard. He's got the deck stacked against him, but he could win.
Well, he's got a voter base. So what is his? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, what could happen then in 2028 is maybe there's a Democrat with some brass like Mike Dougen, who does it on the national level. Why couldn't a guy like Pete Buttigieg or AOC run as an independent? Why run as a Democrat? Why run with that crummy brand next to your name? Be interesting.
Well, I can't see either one of those breaking with the Democratic Party. But so what is? I don't know anything about this. The mayor of Detroit.
I could.
What is his critique of the Democratic Party? What is his rationale for saying I am running for governor, but not as a Democrat, and this is how I am different? What does he say?
He says that neither party welcomes Democrats like myself. The Democratic Party has chased too many people like myself out of the party. It's out of touch. It's stale. It's not focused on.
So what does that mean? Chasing people like me. What is he talking about?
He's talking about voters who are tired of being promised change and not getting it. He's talking about voters in his city, which is 80% African American. Mike Dougen, by the way, is a white man from the suburbs. Yeah. He's talking about voters in his city who stopped voting Democratic. A lot of them stopped voting, period. and some of them went and voted for Donald Trump. He's talking about voters who are sick of the duopoly and are looking for something different. It's that simple. We don't have to overanalyze it. People don't vote based on a checklist of policies. They vote based on who identifies most with them, who understands what they're going through and is most
So
likely to change it. Somebody with a D or R next to the name isn't that person.
so see, he kind of a I am different because I get shit stuff done candidate? Is that his appeal?
That's part of it, yeah. That's a big part of his appeal because he has gotten shit done in Detroit, and even folks up here in northern Michigan who hate Detroit, partly for racial issues, do have a nostalgia about Detroit when it was a vital, important city. And do look at a man like Dougen and say, hey, he's making that city that was ashamed of something I can be proud of, even though I haven't been there in 20 years. I'm speaking for a lot of people up here. And two,
Yeah.
he's gotten shit done in politics, and he's done it with Republicans. So yes, that is a big appeal that he has, and he can't run like that as a Democrat. As you know, to run as a Democrat, you got to appeal to different constituencies, and you have to pander them and try to knit together a coalition of pandered coalitions. That's not what he needs to do to win, and I argue it's not what most Americans want, and it's certainly not what America needs.
Well, but Gretchen Whitmer has done that and has become a national figure. So give me your take on her.
I just saw some internal polling where her numbers in Michigan are higher than they've ever been, coming off a
Okay.
period in which she was criticized harshly by the left because she cozied up too much to Donald Trump, and she was in the
Right.
Oval Office with him once. Well, son of a gun. She got a promise anyhow, commitment from Trump. We'll see how valuable that is. But to bring a new fighter squadron into Selfridge Air Force Base, a really important jobs and status symbol for Macomb County, Michigan, an important county in the state. And she got some breaks for the auto industry on the tariffs. So she's governing like a guy like Mike Dougen does. What can I do that put points on the board for the people I represent? Here's the problem. Can someone like her get the Democratic nomination for presidency? I don't think so. I mean, she's already gotten beaten up for trying to govern. Again, not from the middle. She's not a centrist. Duggan's not a centrist.
Right.
They're just practical politicians who get shit done and aren't afraid to reach across the aisle to do so. Aren't afraid, and then not only just across the aisle. Mike Dougen, is a liberal his whole life, works with the business community in Detroit. He gets all kinds of crap from liberals for that, but he gets shit done. It's hard to win the
Okay.
Democratic primary that way.
So, one of the great things about podcasts is that if you forget to bring something up, you can go back and do it, and nothing bad happens. You can't do that on broadcast media necessarily. But I want to go back to the big beautiful friendships and the expiration date on Donald Trump's loyalty, and we started off with Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin. There's also, and I'm really intrigued by what's going on between Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, because as you point out, it's always they come in threes. So we talked about Musk, we talked about Putin. What's happening to the big beautiful friendship between Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu? Those guys were so close up until, I don't know, like last month.
Yeah, they were close when their interests aligned. But now Donald Trump thinks that what he needs is a deal, because he thinks he's a deal maker. He's not a good one.
Yeah.
But he thinks he needs a deal with Iran, even though there's so many problems with the possibility of a deal with Iran. For one thing, he undid the deal that Barack Obama had with Iran to limit their nuclear capabilities. But now, for whatever reasons, he thinks he needs that for his brand. Well, the last thing Bibi wants is the United States getting in bed with Iran. He wants to bomb Iran. He wants to bomb their nuclear facilities. And Trump has said, hold off, let me get my deal. Well, here's a case where two men who are very transactional, who, when their interests align, will crawl in bed with each other, now have jumped out of bed with each other. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would put my money on Bibi. Bibi, like Putin, knows how to play Trump. He knows how pliable Trump is. Trump is one of the most pliable men I've ever seen in professional life.
Right.
Bibi knows how to flatter him. He knows how to bully him. He knows how to stand up to him. But right now, Bibi's going to have to play all those cards because Trump wants something different than what Bibi wants.
Well, and he's got a better card. He's got a pretty good card because the one thing that Donald Trump does not want to do is walk away from Israel. I mean, that has some real political ramifications. That perhaps walking away from Ukraine, he in his world, in his mind, he doesn't think will happen. But Netanyahu is such a strange character. Yeah,
here's where Trump is different than so many other people like you and me and most politicians.
Yeah.
Most people can look around the corner strategically and say, "Hey, I don't want to do this because I can't lose. Yeah. I can't walk away from Israel." Just like with the tariffs, we all knew what was going to happen if he raised the tariffs too high. Trump couldn't see that until he forced bad consequences to happen, and then he reacted. It's going to be the same thing here. He can't see what's going to happen around the corner, but as soon as he starts losing, as soon as donors who find Israel very important to their cause start blaming Trump and start pulling money away from Trump's family and Trump's party, that's when he'll get strategic. That's when he'll start bowing back to Bibi, if I had to guess.
Well, I mean, the Saudis and the government of Qatar have really figured out exactly how to play Donald Trump. I mean, the joke. I mean, it was a joke when the South African president met in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, and they said, "Well, maybe I should have given you a plane." And Trump said, "Yeah, you should have." And basically, it's a joke, but it's real. It's like everybody's sitting around going, "Okay, what do we want from Donald Trump, and how do we get it? Will we bribe him, or we flatter him, or we praise him?" I mean, he is so pliable. And this is the extraordinary thing. And as you point out, if he in fact is not running for re-election, then everything is retirement planning, right? Everything is as opposed to some sort of geopolitical grand strategy or scheme. So I think that one's going to be interesting to play out. The other thing with Bibi Netanyahu, though, is, and I am pro-Israel. I support their war against Hamas, but Bibi Netanyahu is in many ways a Trump-like character in the sense that he seems to be okay, let me just ask you this. Is there part of you that thinks that he's prolonging the war because he knows that when the war ends, he's out as prime minister, and if he's out as prime minister, he's probably going to go to jail? I mean, 100%. I can't get that thought out of my head, which is that, no, that's what, you think so?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree completely. And what would prolong the war more than him ordering as commander in chief an attack inside of Iran? It's a job extension strategy for Bibi, 100%.
Yeah, and that's ugly no matter what you think about the particular conflict. Ron Fournier, thank you so much for joining me. You can find Ron's work at Convulsions, Politics, Culture, Communications, and Life on Substack. And you do this every morning. You get up at 4:30 in the morning and you put out the top headlines of the day, which I always read. Yeah. Do you get up at 4:30 in the morning?
Thank you.
Really?
For my paid subscribers, I call it the morning read-in, where I give you my take on the most interesting stories in those 4 categories. And then, like you do, I do the free newsletters 3 or 4 times a week.
Well, listen, it is definitely worth a subscription. Ron, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it very, very much.
Charlie,
and thank you all for tuning in. Okay, well, thank you. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of To the Contrary podcast. We do this. You know why we do this, because more than ever, we need to remind ourselves that we are not the crazy ones.